Hey guys, how's everybody this morning? It's Tuesday. I'm sleepy, but I do know what day it is. I'm filling in for Jennifer a bit. So you'll see me Tuesdays and Thursdays, except when we're on vacation and stuff like that. So yeah, I apologize for being late again. I'm not a morning person. I want to be. I think I would get so much more done. I know I would get so much more done. But man, I do like mornings, but just cannot get myself up. I'm not disciplined enough. I don't get enough sleep. I think that's some of it. All right. Got my comments up. In all fairness, I'm running on a deficit of sleep because we went tent camping this past weekend. And I don't know about you guys. I never sleep when I'm camping, especially tent camping. And then we were up in Punxsutawney. It was like a family reunion. My dad's sister invited her husband's side of the family as well as her. So it was really, really cool. A nice time with family. But we were just roughing it on a family member's farm in a field. And don't you know, it's the middle of June, but we had probably some of the coldest nights we've had. It was like 45 the one night, and the other night it was windy, and I wasn't even sure if our tent was going to stay up. It was wild. So yeah, running on about 2 days of sleep deprivation, and I did get a good night's sleep the night before last, but then Joe woke me up last night, so I apologize. I'd like to say that, I'll get better, but I'm just not a morning person. But yeah, especially today. So good morning, Mary. I'll wait for a couple people to get on. We also took, I want to tell you, we also took our little dog, Penny, that I often mention, our little dachshund, Jack Russell, who'll be 13 in a few months. Didn't want to take her, but because my parents were also going on this trip, my mom is usually the one that watches her. But I was blown away. I don't know if it was just my mom praying that she would do well for us, but she hates to ride in the car, and this was a 3-hour trip. She has accidents all the livelong day, everywhere. A lot of it, I think, is territorial and marking from our other dog, but she pees in the weirdest, most inconvenient, horrible places, and she did not. I bought her a kitty litter pan to make as her bed because I thought if she pees in the tent, I don't want our bedding getting wet. I can't just wash it. So that was her little bed. She rode in the van. She slept in it in our tent, and she was like a totally different dog. So I don't know if it's just what they say of get animals in, their environment and doing the things that they do, like running in a field or whatever, but she was great. So I was thankful for that, but it was still having another kid to okay, has she drank water? Has she gone potty? All these things. So it was still tiring. Good morning, Tambra. But anyway, I hope you guys had a good weekend. We also had VBS at our church this past week, and we did that Knoebels trip on Wednesday. So we've just been running in summer mode. But yeah, I'll go ahead and get started. I only have 2 people on, but as an introduction, I will say this was a hard one for me. It's based on an Old Testament story, and I'll just be honest, some of those Old Testament stories, when you read, I went back and read the context, and they're just heavy. They're just really heavy, and trying to understand, why the Lord ordered some of the things he did. And I definitely think it's important that we don't, directly apply everything to our current lives, because we've talked about this before, how the Old Testament, was very specifically ordered, the Jews and their lives and everything, God's people it was specifically ordered by the Lord to kind of play out as it did. And so sometimes we can't just pull from something and directly apply it, if that makes any sense, because it was for a specific purpose and plan for God's people. So that being said, the story is hard to read. It actually is based in between Jericho's defeat and fall and this other city. It's Ai. I don't know if you say A or if it's I. My English phonics would want me to say A. 2 vowels go walking, first does the talking, but I don't know. And I can't say that I specifically remember that city's name, but some people would refer to it as Achan's sin. And so that's kind of what this is about. And Charles Stanley, he kind of draws a different lesson from it about failure. I personally think it's less about failure because I think of failure as being trying and not succeeding. I think this is more about sin and disobedience, but we'll just kind of muddle through it together. Mary says, I agree. Summer mode with kids is fun, but can be tiring. Thanks, Mary. I think it's just going to take a couple days of catching up. I feel like it's like the newborn phase, when you just go multiple nights with just an hour here, an hour there. So I'll get there. So anyway, I'll jump in here. Did you get anybody else on? Not seeing my comments now. No. Okay. It's called Failure. Like I said, he goes kind of in that direction with it, and it's based on the verse Joshua 7:6. It says, Joshua tore his clothes and fell to the earth on his face before the ark of the Lord. Having just defeated the great city of Jericho, as I said, the Israelites prepared to take, I guess I'll say a small town that seemed easy to conquer. But the Israelite warriors had disobeyed God and had become overconfident in their own abilities. So the Lord got their attention by letting them fail in their military endeavor against Ai. It was a terrible blow, but it reminded them of their dependence on God. Of course, there's a vast difference between failing and being a failure. A person only becomes a failure if he or she stops trying altogether. But being unsuccessful in an incident can actually prove to be the greatest stepping stone to success in your life if you will turn your attention to God, just as Joshua did after the defeat at Ai. Friend, your failure today can actually serve to make you a success tomorrow if you're willing to acknowledge your mistakes and learn from the Father. Therefore, thank Him for getting your attention, forgiving you, and teaching you to respond properly, and be assured by doing so you pave the way to future victories. It says, Father, thank you for keeping my pride from inhibiting your purposes. Help me to honor you in all things. Amen. In His presence, learn from your mistakes. Mary says, when I read this, I showed me the pride of self-reliance that we can put before the Lord. Yeah, and so I was going to say that. So first thing, when I read it, before I went back and read the story, it definitely hit home. I'm a perfectionist. I'm always trying to be the best. I'm competitive. Like, that's just my nature. It's not a good nature because perfection, other than as far as the standard of the Lord, is not something that we even need to worry about. We don't need to compare ourselves to others. I think I mentioned that was in the sermon. That's pride. And so that word stuck out to me in the prayer. Thank you for keeping my pride from inhibiting your purposes. And I'll share, I think I had mentioned that I had an interview a couple weeks ago. And I didn't get the job. I found out last week I did not get it. And it was a really big blow to my ego. To be honest, I had been hired for this job in 2020. I think it was 2020. Yeah, I think it was like May or June of 2020. And then that was, the schools had shut down, and that was when we made our decision to homeschool. And so I stepped away from it before even beginning the job because it was going to begin that fall. And so when I interviewed again this time, I honestly thought I was a shoo-in. I thought I was already hired for this. So it's just a formality. It took guts to do the interview process again because I did feel bad for stepping away from the job in 2020, but I knew that's what I had to do. I didn't know how to homeschool. I didn't know what I was doing, and it was just going to be too much to take on. I felt more confident in my abilities now that we've had a couple of years in. I know what curriculum we like. We have a rhythm, that kind of thing. But anyway, just really brutally honest, it was a blow to my ego, and I was a little bit angry. Maybe angry strong, but I was feeling like it didn't make sense, and that it truly, I think I said to Matt, like, they should have given me a chance. Like, I could be good at this, which is interesting because oftentimes my pride does not come in the form of confidence. It comes in the form of fear, as I've shared. I'm trusting my own. I want that control, and when I don't have it, it comes out as fear, and that's also pride mixed in there. But I'm not usually very confident in myself. But I was like, man, I would have been good at this, and it was kind of this attitude. It's ugly to share, but of like, they don't know what they're missing. I mean, truly, I'm kind of embarrassed to say that now. And the Lord, that was on Friday. I didn't even respond to the email because I was just like, I don't get it. And Sunday was when Pastor Mark preached that sermon on humility. And man, I heard the Lord be like, okay, you are not everything, and my plans are best. And he really put me in my place. So when I read this today, even though it wasn't a failure, it certainly wasn't a success. I interviewed and didn't get the job, but I can see how the Lord used that to put me in my place and check me, have me check my heart, and realize that my dependence is on the Lord and His plans, as Charles Stanley mentioned. Um, oh, good morning. Who is that? I can't see. Hey, Vicky. Um, but like I said, this Old Testament story, when I went back in and read it, um, my little notes I jotted down was this is more of a story of disobedience. Now it does say like when the men went and scouted out A or I, um, they did underestimate it. And I read a commentary, and I can't even remember who it was now. It wasn't like Matthew Henry or one of the more common ones. But I read a commentary last night that said, how often do we underestimate the enemy? And so what they did was they sent only a few thousand men, I think it said, and they ended up running in retreat. And then many of their men died, which is kind of more of what he's talking about here in this story as far as failure, I think. But the story goes on to say that Achan, one of the Israelite men, I forget which tribe he was from now, specifically took some of the, it was silver, something else, some of the stuff that they plundered and hid it under his tent. And back a chapter before in Joshua 6:18, there was a warning specifically not to do that. It said, but keep away from the devoted things, the things that were supposed to be given to the Lord, so that you will not bring about your own destruction by taking any of them. Otherwise, you will make the camp of Israel liable to destruction and bring trouble on it. So that was literally given specific instruction from the Lord, and Achan did the exact opposite. And Joshua didn't know this. It didn't seem like he knew this when we read this verse, this Joshua 7:6, where he's coming before the Lord. He kind of came complaining, but it was also with some reverence mixed in. So very often where we fall in that place of like, well, Lord, but we still know he's God. And, eventually our flesh gets around, not our flesh, our spirit brings our flesh around to that place of surrender. And Joshua kind of is on his face before the Lord. And I found God's response interesting. Verse 10, he says, stand up, exclamation mark. What are you doing down on your face? And so I sort of tied that into this message of failure, that we can take that as how we should respond. Like, yes, be in a posture of surrender to God. I didn't latch the door, so Lily's here. Going downstairs. Sorry, hang on. Go on. It's worse than my kids. Anyway, be in a posture of surrender to God. But get up. Once you've fallen down, get back up. And what the Lord was asking him to do is deal with the sin in the camp. He then goes on to say, bring forth tribe by tribe, clan by clan, person by person, and I'll basically point out who it is that's brought in this sin, and you need to get rid of it. And then the story gets ugly because they stone Achan and all of his cattle and family, I think maybe, to eradicate the sin. So again, that's the part that I just, I don't want to dwell on or think about. But the idea being, don't mope, don't wallow, get up and do something about the sin in your life. Or if it's just failure, get up and try again is kind of what I drew from that. And it was interesting. I would like to do a study on this. I didn't have the time, but I just put in the search bar, stand up, because that just stood out to me, that's what God said to Joshua. And what are you doing down on your face? But stand up. And I searched that. And do you know how many times God or Jesus in the New Testament says stand up? I mean, there's times where it was listed where it was just practical, like one of the versions, like take up your mat and walk, when he healed the man by the pool, I think. Okay, that makes practical sense. Stand up. But there were a lot of times, like he spoke to Job, when he put him in his place. I don't know if you guys remember the verse. I don't have the direct reference, but he says, like, stand up and gird yourself like a man. Of course, there were a lot of references to standing up, like standing up for righteousness. But I mean, there were a ton of that little phrase, stand up, stand up, stand up. And so, yeah, I don't really have anything more to say about that. I'd like to study it out, but I just thought, if we just took two words from it, that maybe that would be our encouragement today. If you fall, stand up, keep going. And if it's failure or if it's sin, make sure you're standing up and turning around and going the other way, and getting rid of that in your life and not just ignoring it and letting it grow. So hope that makes a little bit of sense to you. That was kind of what I could pull from it. I felt like it was a little bit disjointed with the Old Testament story that was there, but hey, I don't think I could write 365 I know I couldn't write 365 devotions on a bunch of different scriptures. So I know sometimes they are using something with a little bit of a loose connection, but there's still a really good message in there. So, oh, who hopped on? Who did I miss? Oh no, okay, it was Vicky again. For some reason it popped up in Restream and I hadn't seen it before. But all right, so I'm going to pray us out and then I will see everybody Thursday. God, thank you for this day. Missing the sunshine this morning, but I'm grateful for this warm weather that we're having and grateful for this time together on 365. You know that I struggle with some of these Old Testament stories and the harshness of them. It's just hard to grasp some of the reality of them too, Lord. But I know that your word is true. We know that we can glean from your word truths, and I think from this that you just want to encourage us, Lord, to deal with the sin in our lives and to not underestimate the enemy. And then also just to come to you and know that we have to depend on you for all things and every minute of every day. And we don't. The truth of the matter is we don't. We often try to do things on our own, as Mary mentioned, and be reliant on ourselves. So forgive us of that, Lord. Point out that sin to us and help us to recognize it and to root it out, to come before you, surrender it, and then stand up. And thank you that we can stand up in victory because of your son, Jesus, not because of anything that we have done. So I just pray that that would be an encouragement to everybody listening today and that you would help us to put that into action in our lives. Give this day and everything in it to you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All righty, let's go and do it. That's what I got.